of course, there is the war, which is horrible and despicable, and we completely want this to stop. That's clear.
First powerful Western nation hits Israel with biggest sanction. For weeks now, some Western nations have grown somewhat agitated and disappointed with Israel's conduct in Gaza. These are the same people who preached for the respect of human rights in Ukraine, making it unsettling to continue supporting a country that, as an occupying force, refused to initiate a ceasefire despite having a greater advantage than its Palestinian adversary. We diligently seek out scoops that mainstream media ignores. Please like and share this video to raise awareness. Hit the subscribe button to stay updated with the latest from Palestine.
Es defensen prenent partit, no posant-se de perfil. I en aquest sentit sí que ajuda aquesta proposició, senyors de Junts. Cal prendre partit per defensar els drets humans. Jo cada dia, i els hi recomano molt, m'obligo a mirar, per exemple, a través d'Instagram, les imatges en directe a Gaza d'un periodista, molts d'ells assassinats, Muqtaz Azaiza, on poden veure els milers de nens i nenes ferides, assassinades, i a moltíssimes persones innocents palestines que mirant a càmera ens criden a nosaltres i ens pregunten: és que no ens veieu? És que no ens veieu? Això ens està cridant avui la població indefensa, civil...
Much like Barcelona Nkomu Council member Ada Colau, the world witnessed the apparent hypocrisy that plagued the Western response to the Gaza crisis compared to the reaction toward Russia in Ukraine. Consequently, many Western nations felt compelled to take action. Some acted swiftly, while others were slower. However, the most crucial outcome was that none of them took strategic, robust steps to halt Israel. There were no sanctions, penalties, minimal reprimands, or restrictions to impede its ability to prosecute the war and perpetuate destruction in Palestine. Over time, nations like Spain rose to the occasion. While their actions might not have been sufficient, the European countries stood as a shining example among those that rejected Israeli bullying of Palestinians. France and its president were also outspoken when it became evident that Israel wasn't behaving democratically or as civilized as it claims. Emmanuel Macron was unequivocal in stating that Israel had no right whatsoever to impose collective punishment on Palestinians for the actions of a few individuals in the government.
We clearly condemn this terrorist attack and this terrorist group and recognize the right of Israel to protect itself and react. But day one, we say that this reaction and the fight against terrorism, because it is led by a democracy, should be compliant with international rules, rule of war, and humanitarian international law. And day after day, what we saw is a permanent bombing of civilians in Gaza. And I think it's very important to say the whole story. But I think this is the only solution we have, this ceasefire. Because it's impossible to explain we want to fight against terrorism by killing innocent people.
The Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, followed a similar path. He condemned Israel for its actions but refrained from announcing any major policy changes in trade or diplomacy to prompt a shift in Israeli authorities' behavior. Current trade levels between Israel and Canada remain high, and there haven't been any corresponding actions taken to ensure that Israel changes its destructive tendencies towards the people of Palestine. While his words were forceful, they lacked substantial action to support them.
I have been clear that the price of justice cannot be the continued suffering of all Palestinian civilians. Even wars have rules. All innocent life is equal in worth, Israeli and Palestinian. I urge the government of Israel to exercise maximum restraint. As the world is watching, on TV, on social media, we're hearing the testimonies of doctors, family members, survivors, kids who've lost their parents. The world is witnessing this, the killing of women and children, of babies. This has to stop.
However, one European nation that truly comprehends the meaning of occupation and freedom stood up and aligned words with substantial action. Among all others, this nation demonstrated an unwavering determination to defend the human right to life for average Palestinians, and they did so with fervor. That nation is Barcelona. The City Council of Barcelona, Spain's second-largest city, voted to suspend relations with Israel's far-right government, citing what the party behind the motion termed as the genocide in Gaza. Introduced by the leftist Barcelona en Comú party, the resolution asserted that no reasonable government should turn a blind eye to a genocide. The resolution demanded that the municipal government cease institutional relations with Israel's current government until a definitive ceasefire is established, and the basic rights of the Palestinian people are respected, in accordance with United Nations resolutions.
Es defensen prenent partit, no posant-se de perfil. I en aquest sentit sí que ajuda aquesta proposició, senyors de Junts. Cal prendre partit per defensar els drets humans. Jo cada dia, i els hi recomano molt, m'obligo a mirar, per exemple, a través d'Instagram, les imatges en directe a Gaza d'un periodista, molts d'ells assassinats, Muqtaz Azaiza, on poden veure els milers de nens i nenes ferides, assassinades, i a moltíssimes persones innocents palestines que mirant a càmera ens criden a nosaltres i ens pregunten: és que no ens veieu? És que no ens veieu? Això ens està cridant avui la població indefensa civil de Palestina. Doncs bé, avui, des de l'Ajuntament de Barcelona, els hi diem sí, us veiem.
Furthermore, the resolution advocated for ensuring that public contracts exclude operators involved in activities contrary to international humanitarian law. It strongly condemned attacks on civilian populations, both Israeli and Palestinian, and rejected actions amounting to collective punishment, such as forced population displacement, systematic destruction of homes and civilian infrastructure, or the blockade of essential supplies like energy, water, food, medical provisions, and medicines to the Gaza Strip population. Ada Colau, a council member from Barcelona en Comú, stated, "It's not a war, it's a genocide." As Spanish President Pedro Sánchez has stated, "It is unbearable. If it is unbearable, we not only need to denounce it but also take action instead of remaining on the sidelines."
I Barcelona recupera la seva tradició de compromís amb els drets humans i avui anuncia que suspèn les relacions amb el govern d'Israel. Prenem partit per defensar els drets humans de totes les poblacions, la de Palestina, la d'Israel i la de tot el món. Per tant, suspendre relacions és un missatge potent que ja han fet molts països, per cert, que ha fet la Sud-àfrica, que va patir l'apartheid, que ha fet altres estats com Bolívia, que estan fent molts països i que el que és una vergonya és que Europa arribi tan tard. Avui també li diem a la població de Palestina que els hi demanem disculpes perquè avui les institucions europees ens avergonyeixen profundament. I a mi he de dir que no em sento representada i que tant de bo això es modifiqui ben aviat. L'Europa que volem és una Europa realment compromesa amb la democràcia i amb els drets humans i per això s'ha de prendre partit, s'ha de suspendre relacions amb un govern que està cometent genocidi, insisteixo, crims
It seems like there's a lot of back and forth regarding Barcelona's stance towards Israel and Palestine. Ada Colau, during her 8-year tenure as Barcelona's mayor until June, made a significant move by announcing the city's decision to sever ties with Israel, ending a 25-year-old Twin Cities relationship with Tel Aviv. This decision was prompted by the Israeli government's perceived crime of apartheid against the Palestinian people. However, Barcelona's current mayor, Jaume Collboni of the Socialist Party of Catalonia, reversed Colau's action in September. Despite this change, there have been demonstrations of solidarity with Palestinians in Barcelona. For instance, dock workers in the city refused to handle military materials destined for Israel or conflict zones where they could potentially harm civilians. The recent resolution from Barcelona urges both Israel and the Palestinian resistance to extend the temporary 4-day ceasefire and calls for an end to Israeli violence against Palestinian civilians in the illegally occupied West Bank. It also demands the unconditional and safe release of all hostages held by Palestinian freedom fighters. In the context of the ceasefire agreement, Palestinian freedom fighters released 24 captives, including 13 Israeli women and children, 10 Thai nationals, and 1 Filipino. In return, Israel released 39 Palestinian women and minors. However, there's ongoing negotiation, with Palestine resistance seeking the release of 50 of its hostages in exchange for 150 Palestinians imprisoned by Israel. Israeli forces have arrested thousands of Palestinians, which critics argue often happens on questionable grounds, purportedly to provide Israel with leverage and bargaining chips. There are videos circulating showing the emotional release of a Palestinian woman, Malek Salman, after spending 8 years in Israeli prison. Salman and 38 others were part of a prisoner swap deal between Palestinian resistance and the Israeli occupation. Her reunion with her mother after this long imprisonment was a poignant moment captured on film. It's quite a significant development as Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez recently urged the international community, especially the European Union, to recognize the Palestinian state, hinting at the possibility of doing so unilaterally. During his visit to Israel and Palestine, Sanchez emphasized the need to replace violence with hope and peace, strongly condemning the indiscriminate killing of civilians as completely unacceptable. In a joint appearance alongside Belgian Prime Minister Alexander De Croo, both leaders echoed the call to end the seemingly endless cycle of violence in the Middle East. They urged Israel to adhere to international humanitarian law and advocated for a lasting ceasefire. Interestingly, shortly after Sanchez's statements, Israel summoned the Spanish ambassador, Ana Maria Salomon, delivering a harsh reprimand in response to the Prime Minister's words.
I think that the large majority of the international community agreed that we need to a permanent ceasefire. I also reiterate Israel's right to defend itself, but it must do so within the parameters and limitations imposed by international humanitarian law. And this is not the case. The indiscriminate killing of innocent civilians, including thousands of boys and girls, are completely unacceptable.
If you appreciate our efforts in sharing this information, please show your support by liking and sharing this video to raise awareness. Hit the subscribe button to stay updated with the latest news from Palestine. Until our next update, peace.